Hey everyone, Thyworm here with the second episode of Solar Cell Found build reviews, where I'm trying out a build in Solar Cell Found and try to assess its viability, fun and purpose. Thanks for all the feedback in the pilot, that surely helped a lot, so let's dive into this new episode. The second episode covers the Power Siphon Miner Trickster by Jungroan. Maybe this build is too well known already for this series, but I wanted to try it out either way. Jungroan's build is meant as a league starter, and according to him it is even hardcore Solar Cell Found viable, as he used it to race on multiple occasions. I like league starter builds, as they are usually also good in SSF. It is a decent all-rounder, it does great damage, has layers of defenses, and it is Jungroan. I mean, this guy has a deep understanding of Path of Exile in all different game modes, including SSF. So it's no surprise this build is incredibly solid. Most of his builds require 5 buttons to work, but in this case it is actually a 1-button build, which is another advantage. I reached level 97, I am doing mostly tier 16s because I hate tier 17s. You can do tier 17s though, that is not a problem at all. I killed a bunch of bosses like Maven all the way up to the Feared, but as I hate tier 17s I also don't have many fragments for uber bosses, so I am not doing those. It is a great all-round build, something I can strongly recommend. Last episode I covered a max roll build, which has an extensive written guide, so going into the build didn't make a lot of sense. This time Jungroan only made a POB and a video, links in the description, so I will provide a bit more details. The build uses Power Siphon as its main skill, which fires blue projectiles to multiple enemies and has auto-targeting in the skill itself. Despite it being an attack, it scales with spell damage at 150% effect, so the 100% increased spell damage from our Daedri's tenure actually turns into 150% attack damage. Power Siphon also gains 10% more crit chance per power charge and 31% more crit multiplier per power charge with a 2023 quality gem, making power charges another scaling factor. This, combined with new wands, where you can easily get 12.5% base crit chance on a wand, allows for easy crit caps, even to the point where you can equip a Maraline's Fallacy, which gives 40% less crit chance, but up to 240% crit multiplier, and you will still be crit capped. The last thing you need is flat damage, which you can get on the wand as well. To avoid using self-casting, the build uses mines instead, making you throw 3 mines at the same time. The only drawback there is that you have to throw mines a little bit away from you or they won't trigger. I got used to that pretty much after finishing the campaign. The rest of the build is rather standard and I'm not gonna go further into it. Jungroan's video doesn't specifically have pros and cons, so let me share my pros and cons with this build, starting with the pros. 1. It is an incredibly smooth build to level and progress. It's tanky, it does good damage, it's a great league starter, but it's also good as a second character. 2. It is a versatile build capable of mapping, but it also works great for bossing. I am mostly mapping with it, but tried several bosses and this build is tanky enough and it does more damage than my min-maxed Righteous Fire Chieftain. 3. It is an easy build to progress and scale. Jungroan mentions in his video that this is a great build to learn about making builds yourself because it is fairly simple and straightforward, and if you understand a few key principles, you should be able to scale the build yourself without having to look into additional guides. 4. Jungroan made another video with endgame options for this build, meaning 4 directions or transitions to take the builds towards, in case you've reached the end of the POB and you want to transition into something even stronger. I will link that video as well. 5. The build has no cluster jewels, which I always think in SSF is a huge pro. And 6. Visual clarity. When compared to most other builds, including the one from the pilot, this skill is clean and it is easy to track what is happening without the need for MTX. Then some cons. 1. I already mentioned it, but the mine throwing distance. If you throw the mines too close to your character, they don't detonate, which is something to get used to. In smaller, narrow maps like Toxic Sewer, you throw some of the mines into the wall, meaning they're too close to you, and they also won't detonate until you walk away. Due to the nature of the skill and mines, small spaces, rooms and narrow maps can feel a little bit clunky as your mines just won't detonate, or at least not straight away. 2. The build uses a few uniques, but even without those uniques the build does plenty of damage. I will get back to this in the preparations section. And 3. I found that elemental resistances can be a little bit problematic with all of these uniques, and getting res capped is a little challenging. Definitely take Alira in the bandit quest. I'm listing a few preparations in case this is your second build in SSF. Things you can already collect up front before you start playing. 1. Either a Fury Valve amulet, which greatly helps in clear speed, or a Mariline's Fallacy, which is ultimately the amulet you will be using. Both are fairly common uniques. 2. A Doedri's Tenure Gloves, ideally corrupted with a good implicit. And 3. The Crown of the Inward Eye from Cirrus. It's the most common drop from him, and I farmed it on this character itself. It is a great defensive and offensive item. That's it. None of these are mandatory, but they all are significant upgrades. I will be talking a little bit more than in the last episode about leveling and progression. Leveling starts with rolling magma, and around level 31 you can swap to Power Siphon Mines on a 4-link. It is a smooth swap and these things deal damage immediately. You can also get used to the throwing distance throughout the rest of the campaign. The initial damage on the 4-link is pretty crazy, and if you have a decent wand or even a leveling unique like a Storm Prison wand, you're going to have a field day. Mapping with the build is just as easy, and from there it is a natural progression, I would say. You work your way towards a 6-link chest for the main skill and get pieces with evasion and energy shield. If you're not feeling so tanky, you get more defensive nodes on the passive tree first. I did that myself because the skill itself does so much damage. You really don't need extra damage on the tree at first. And the path of building offers a few leveling and swapping trees as well from Jungroan's original path of building. Overall, I would say it's a very smooth ride all the way up to tier 16 and 17 maps. Small self-plug, check the description for Google Docs on all my SSF stuff, account name, POBs, atlas trees, etc. There's a Discord link in there as well. I have a guild, Thy Guild, feel free to join in-game. And don't forget to subscribe, guys. Okay, back to the video. Let's discuss some of the alterations I made to the build in SSF, including the reasons why. I honestly didn't change much when it comes to the POB. I'm following the whole passive tree to the letter. The only nodes I am not taking are the extra curse nodes at the top. The idea here is that you use a mark and a curse with Arcanist Brand, but I'm just never casting Arcanist Brand with this build. Maybe I shoot on bosses or something, but I'm just not. These things are dying super fast anyway. Instead, I opted for another automation setup where I am automating Phase Run, Withering Step and combine it with a Life Tap so it doesn't cost mana. A mark on hit setup doesn't work because you're not hitting anything yourself as your mines are the ones that hit. The only way that I found to trigger a mark on hit is with something like Shield Charge, which is a hit, but I found that a little bit clunky and dangerous, charging into rares and uniques. I've put a Vile Grace in the build instead of the regular one so I can press that button for a bunch of extra evasion and spell suppression in tricky situations. And in the passive tree I have yet again slotted in an Inspired Learning, which is just something I liked to do, especially in juiced maps with tons of rares. They're not that hard to get in SSF these days with div cards, otherwise I didn't change much. Let's go over the gear so you see what I managed to gather in SSF and what the build looks like as a result. I think gear is a decent indicator of SSF viability and you can sort of look at it from your perspective as well if this gear is achievable. I have played the build quite a bit, I am level 97, so my gear is pretty good. The wand I crafted myself with a multi-mod. I found it with some good affixes. I got 2 lucky annuls I think, and I was left with just flat lightning damage and a high crit chance on a rare wand. I crafted multi-mod and then I slammed it with a Crusader orb that I had lying around. Because this happened to be an item level 74 wand, the only outcome of that slam was increased damage per power charge. The Crown of the Inward Eye comes from Cirrus. All those transfigurations you should read for yourself, but they're pretty good and they're scaling a bunch of stats for me. Mariline's Fallacy we covered already, it's great. My shield isn't very good, I can probably make a better one than this, but I really need the chaos resistance on this thing. Then 2 decent chaos res rings. One has a bunch of attributes because you need strength in this build, and the other has a bunch of resists. The 6-link chest I'm pretty happy with. You can even get more evasion and energy shield, but for SSF this is a very decent chest. I'm just slamming essences on something like this, or I roll defenses crafts using harvest. Doedri's tenure we covered already. The cast speed is not a downside here, so it's a pure upside with 100% spell damage. The Stygian Vice is a standard one, I would say. Inside is a jewel with corrupted blood immunity and a bunch of flat damage for the wand. The boots finally have more resistances, freeze immunity allowing me to use another Pantheon and more spell suppress. Flasks are rather standard too, with bleeding immunity and a bunch of standard suffixes on an evasion crit build. The main skill, Power Siphon, uses an awakened added lightning damage, which is a common drop if you farm some Maven witnessed maps. I'm still looking for the awakened lightning penetration one, but that is also common. To conclude, I'm incredibly satisfied with this build. This would be a blast in a league start scenario, and if the build isn't impacted before next league, I will likely league start with this. It's smooth, it's simple, it's straightforward, and it feels great to play once you get used to the throwing distance. I've played it now as a 3rd or 4th character and it still doesn't disappoint. It's likely the best character I have at the moment, although the RF Chieftain is tankier and clears faster still. In terms of boss damage, however, Jungroan's build is much better. I hope you had a good time watching this episode. Let me know what you think. Also, let me know if you have any suggestions. Subscribe and like for more PoE SSF content. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. Love you all. See you soon. Bye bye.